Good afternoon, and welcome to the White House. It's so good to have you here. You are among leaders. This session today is part of the Compassion in Action Roundtable series that our office has sponsored. We began this in January, this series, and we've addressed such wide-ranging topics as reducing youth violence, reducing malaria in Africa. We've looked at the prisoner reentry issue, and each month for the balance of this administration, we're trying to do several things at once with this series. One is to better define need. When 1 million children die in sub-Saharan Africa due to malaria, a preventable and treatable disease, that's something we should be burdened by. That's something we should understand more clearly and feel a call to action about. But we should also receive hope that that's a problem being addressed by faith-based and community organizations, NGOs in Africa, for example, or in the prisoner reentry issue. 700,000 prisoners return to society each year. 2/3 of them scheduled, if you listen to the data, to return to incarceration. We should be burdened by that, and yet we should take hope in the faith-based and community solutions that are addressing that problem. Then we should do these two things together, a heightened awareness of need and a heightened sort of inspiration or encouragement by those solutions that we're detecting to consider together a better national strategy. How can we form federal policy? How can we spend our money more wisely? And how can we create multi-sector partnerships to be able to advance these solutions? That's what we're trying to do with this series. And today's topic is so timely and so important because what we're looking at is how the private sector and the public sector can come together to invest in our communities, whether they're distressed urban communities or neglected rural communities that are in need of empowerment and resources and strategies. And together today, what we're going to consider is what the private sector is doing to make a difference and what the public sector is already doing and what we could do more effectively if we have a closer and more dynamic partnership. This topic, today's session actually, was born in a conversation that I had with Stephen Jordan a few months ago. Stephen, you'll hear from later. He represents the corporate citizenship side of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Many of you know Stephen and his good work. And together we were contemplating this theme, and we were sort of identifying a couple of trends at once. One, there seems to be an increase in activity for corporate citizenship, for community foundations or corporate foundations that are privately moving toward need and creating new solutions, as government also is a sort of co-investor in that activity. But we didn't see a proportionate level of understanding about what works and maybe what is needed. And we figured that the sectors alone wouldn't be able to contemplate that together, but indeed by themselves, but in a broader, more sophisticated, dynamic conversation, perhaps we could get on top of this sort of topic together. So Stephen launched a new strategy at the U.S. Chamber looking at community investment from the private sector side with his board and partners. You'll hear from some of them today to consider looking through the corporate lens, how they might better understand and advance new solutions through the Chamber. And we agreed to hold this session today to look at the federal agencies that are in action. You'll hear from Secretary Gutierrez today. He's our keynote speaker, and he'll, as a key member of the Bush administration economic team, help us understand the vision behind our administration's pursuit of innovation and community investment and speak to his agency, which is the lead agency in promoting these strategies and some of the work, the good work that they're doing, of course. And all of this is no destination. This isn't a report out to you. This is intended to be a catalyst to better understand, but then to better advance strategies, maybe more in concert, but at least more strategically. And that is indeed the conversation that we intend to launch today. Before I move into a formal introduction of the Secretary, though, I do want to offer a confession. When I took this post last summer, one of the first acts that I undertook was to better understand the team that I was a part of. The White House Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives was established by executive order the first week that the president was in office. Since then, 11 other federal agencies have centers for faith-based and community initiatives that have been incorporated into their agency's mission and their activities. And so I wanted to meet the directors right away, and I wanted to join them in their effort, better understand their agencies, and see how I could better serve them. When I had the Small Business Administration on my agenda, day 8 or so that I was in office, the question I had was, wonder why we have a faith-based and community initiative at the Small Business Administration. I was unfamiliar with the policies and the programs that they advocated and that they pointed in the direction of community investment. And so I was so eager to learn and excited to share with you their story in part because I think it represents the fullness of what we're talking about today. Victor Pena was a medical doctor in Cuba before arriving in Albuquerque, New Mexico as a political refugee in 1998. In spite of his medical training in his homeland, Dr. Pena supported his family by driving a truck route between New Mexico and Oklahoma. But even that proved difficult due to his lack of U.S. citizenship. So Dr. Pena found refuge again, this time at Catholic Charities in central New Mexico. Following assessment of Victor's situation and his interests, Catholic Charities staff connected him to the SBA Refugee Micro Enterprise Development Training Program. At this program, Victor learned marketing and sales skills en route to becoming self-employed. Even though there's no private enterprise in Cuba, Victor possessed an entrepreneurial spirit. In his words, quote, "You have to risk making your own way. If you don't take the risk, you won't succeed." And Victor succeeded. He initially borrowed $10,000 from the New Mexico SBA Microloan Fund to start a real estate business. He named his business Real Estate Express, and he earned his broker's license. Victor now employs 4 real estate agents. He serves 99% Spanish-speaking clients, and his personal income has increased 300% over the past 3 years. He just renewed his 3rd loan through the SBA, which continues to be his business partner. So in this story, we see refugee resettlement, pathway to citizenship and assimilation, economic development, and expanding home ownership, all rolled into one strategy. This is indeed the power of the Faith-Based and Community Initiative as embedded in the missions of our economic development agencies. You'll see in your program guide today a roster of federal strategies that identify some of the key government policies, programs, and products that we use to stimulate economic development, like Victor's story. We produced for distribution today an economic development guide which lists some programs in particular that I hope you'll use as a resource. You'll hear the private sector panel, and you'll see in your packets other private strategies as well. You'll join me, I'm sure, in an education process today. The wide-angle view of this work is very wide indeed, and we need to be on the learning curve to be sure to help us understand that and to lead today's conversation. It is indeed my pleasure and honor to introduce Secretary Gutierrez. He is fresh from Air Force One. The Secretary has joined President Bush in Georgia today to discuss immigration reform. The Secretary has been a point person for the administration in our negotiations with Congress and more broadly, our conception of what a comprehensive immigration strategy should look like. The Secretary has also been such a key leader, of course, in our strategies with Cuba and opening up Cuba. It's been near and dear to his personal journey, of course, a consequence of his own arrival to this country. And how can this administration share the American dream to so many more who have a hunger to benefit their lives and their families and our nation through their hard work and their imagination are questions that undergird the immigration reform strategy and the Cuba strategy that the Secretary leads. So we're so much in your debt for that and grateful indeed that you've joined us today to share your vision. Carlos Gutierrez is the 35th Secretary of the United States Department of Commerce. He is indeed, of course, a core member of the President's economic team. Secretary Gutierrez joined the Bush administration following a 30-year career with the Kellogg Company, where he rose to become chairman of the board and youngest chief executive officer in the company's history. At Commerce, he heads a diverse agency of some 38,000 employees and a $6.5 billion budget focused on promoting economic growth and opportunity for American business and workers. Secretary Gutierrez believes passionately in President Bush's vision for expanding the 21st century opportunity and ownership society that provides everyone a chance to live the American dream. Secretary Gutierrez came to the United States, as I mentioned, with his family from Cuba when he was a boy. He studied business administration at the Monterrey Institute of Technology in Mexico, and he and his wife, Adelia, have 3 children, Carlos, Erica, and Karina. We are so delighted that You're in our company today, and I welcome you to the podium to offer remarks.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I was just asking Jay if Victor Penna was here, because that would make 2 Cuban-born people who started out as route salesmen. So thank you for being here. Thank you for gathering at the White House today. And above all, for everything that you do and everything that you stand for and everything that you believe in. These are important topics. I'm very pleased that you've gathered here to talk about them. And I'm extremely proud to be part of this discussion, part of this meeting, and part of what you'll be concluding and agreeing to and hopefully acting on after this meeting. I do want to begin by thanking Jay Hine for his leadership, not only in organizing this event, but in leading the Office of Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. This is extremely important. It's a vision that President Bush had, a very simple question that he asked of why not? Why can't we do this on a national scale? Why can't we get this started? Why can't we get this being part of of the fabric of our society? And several years later, I believe today it is a vibrant organization, and it is taking hold throughout the country. Jay, by the way, appeared last February as the featured guest on a show that we have called EDA Today. EDA is Economic Development Administration, and that is produced by the Department of Commerce. And I can tell you that his presentation on that show and elsewhere on the concept of faith-based economic development have resonated and have energized communities around the country. Faith-based and community organizations have emerged as effective, very importantly, as effective and innovative investors in our nation's economic and community development. We applaud the efforts of so many of you who make an investment in the lives of so many people and who make a difference in the lives of so many people and who do it with a great deal of passion and a great deal of commitment. At the Department of Commerce, obviously one of our goals is to lift people out of poverty and provide jobs and create an environment whereby prosperity will take hold by utilizing trade and the private sector and free enterprise. As you can imagine, at the Commerce Department, we are big believers in free enterprise. And we believe that the way to get people out of poverty is by giving them an opportunity to participate in the private sector, in a small business, in entrepreneurship. And as I've traveled the world, I've seen the benefits of free trade and open markets and entrepreneurship and free enterprise and the power of free capital and the power of individual initiative. And there simply is no substitute. As you look around, we're constantly reaching the same conclusion, that there is no substitute for strong, growing economies. It's hard to substitute growth. When you have growth in a community, when you have growth in an economy, it seems like everything is possible. When you don't have growth, it seems like nothing can be done. So we start out with the premise that our role is to create an environment so that growth can happen. Growth in jobs, growth in entrepreneurs, growth in businesses. And while we have made great progress, and you know, our economic statistics are impressive any way you look at them. Today, our unemployment rate is below the average of each of the past 4 decades, 4.5%. We've grown our economy for 22 straight quarters. We're growing ahead of any other developed economy in the world if you look at the last 3, 4, or 5 years. And we've been able to keep inflation in check in spite of the fact that energy prices are increasing. So we feel very good about that, but we need to do more. And we can't be satisfied until everyone who wants a shot at lifting themselves out of poverty can do so. We've also recognized that government is not and cannot be the catalyst for change in the community. There's a role for government, but we cannot expect the government to do everything. and we can't put the accountability and the responsibility on government to be the catalyst for change. We believe that change needs to come about as a partnership, as part of a partnership between the government, between the private sector, and between faith-based organizations. So as Jay mentioned, it is very much a multi-sector solution. And I think you're part of this, of the emergence of the recognition that it needs to be a partnership. No one can do it alone. We all need to work as a team. And businesses as well are also realizing that they have the need to always do their best to become even better corporate citizens. I realize in the private sector, just about every company has a social responsibility budget, but it's a lot more than just, putting a line item in a budget and having someone write a check and then, assuming that you've been a good corporate citizen. It takes a lot more, and there's a lot more room for involvement and to have active participation in community programs. And I'll tell you, I've seen that not just in the U.S., but in my travels around the world. And I'll give you some examples. I was just recently in India, and there I saw the just tremendous opportunity being created by these microcredit programs. And you're talking microcredit, in some cases, loans of $7, $17, $20, just the ability to let someone start a small-scale business and build it from there. And it's just remarkable to see what can be done when people are given the opportunity. I was just in Mexico several months ago. I saw a partnership between UNICEF and private companies building a nationwide education program for underprivileged children with handicaps. And it's also just tremendously motivating to see these kids building their own businesses, whether it be a bakery or doing their own artwork or sculpting. So this all has an outcome. It's not just providing them with a meal. It's giving them the tools to be able to build a better life themselves and to be proud of what they're doing. Major corporations are now not only building social responsibility into their budget and their missions, but they're getting more involved. There's more active participation. You're beginning to see them out there involved on the ground instead of just in the corporate office writing a check. And that's tremendously motivating for me, having come from the private sector. In our country, at the community level, organizations and faith-based groups are also providing the same kind of aid that cannot come from just the government program. Again, it can only come from a partnership. It can only come from this idea that it has to be this three-way team of private sector companies, government, and faith-based organizations and NGOs. That's where it happens, and where we've seen it happen, where we've seen magic happen, it's because we've seen that partnership take hold. Through the Economic Development Administration, the Commerce Department has a long partnership with faith-based and community organizations in rebuilding distressed communities and creating the conditions for economic growth and prosperity. Since 2001, EDA has invested more than $147 million in 187 different faith-based or community projects. The economic benefit of those projects is an estimated 82,000 jobs and $3.5 billion in private investment. So we measure our success in the number of jobs we create, in the number of private sector, in the dollars of private sector capital that we actually attract. In 2006 alone, EDA invested more than $33 million in 44 such projects, with the potential for 19,000 new jobs and nearly $700 million in private sector investment. I'm pleased that one of EDA's most successful faith-based partnerships is here today to share its experiences with you. In 2006, EDA invested $3.5 million in St. Patrick's Center, the nation's largest private sector assistance program for the homeless. Located in St. Louis, Missouri, St. Patrick's Center will use the EDA investment to support its Project Begin, which stands for business, employment, growth, incomes, and neighborhood. And that says it all, and that really captures what this is all about. Project Begin will include a business incubator and vocational training center built into St. Patrick's Center's main facility. To honor the success of this partnership, EDA awarded St. Patrick's Center its 2006 Excellence in Economic Development Award for community and faith-based social entrepreneurship, and we're very, very proud to have done that. I welcome Dan Buck. Where's Dan? Dan. CEO of St. Patrick's Center, who will soon tell you more about this innovative and this remarkable project. We've seen around the world and here at home how economic development can truly contribute to the well-being of communities and can literally transform the lives of people through economic development, not through rhetoric, not through dogmas, but through real hard work by people on the ground like you who care about results. And ultimately this is about results. So I can't tell you how grateful I am for your leadership. I'm extremely grateful for the hard work and the commitment and the passion that you put behind your work. And I am extremely proud to be associated with you. So thank you very much for everything you do, and God bless you. Thank you.
Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for those words. The president calls, he takes him to Georgia, and now he needs him for a policy time. So we do need to spare him and allow him to go. But thank you for being with us, Secretary Gutierrez. I would like to invite the first panel to join us. Stephen Jordan, who I gave a commercial for earlier, will chair this panel. And he'll invite the participants who can join him at this stage. Stephen?
Yeah, we're all going to speak from.
Great. Yeah.
Okay, great. Come on up. Mary, why don't you come here? Suki, you can back me up. Oh, actually, because there's only 4, I have to stand. Okay.
Yeah, you can stand.
I didn't get the choreography right there. Sorry. Well, good afternoon, and thank you, Jay, for the commercial. But more importantly, thank you very much for your leadership. I've actually known Jay since before he was here in his official capacity here, and he's really brought thoughtfulness and an energy level to the Faith-Based and Community Initiatives Office that really is remarkable. He's a great leader, and more importantly, he's really helping to think through future directions for this initiative in a very positive and proactive way. I also want to thank Secretary Gutierrez for his leadership, and I think it's really self-evident, his commitment, that he really feels this from the heart. And of course, he's got some great folks here from EDA and other offices from the department here, and we're pleased to collaborate and partner with them as well. Before I introduce our distinguished panel, Jay asked me to share a couple of findings from our initial listening tour and our surveys and our partnership conference. And you should know the Business Civic Leadership Center is, as was referred to before, the corporate citizenship arm of the U.S. Chamber. And we had developed a pretty robust program around global development and a pretty significant capacity around disaster assistance and recovery. And as we got to working more and more on disaster assistance and recovery issues, we began to realize that community investment wasn't something that you could just tackle episodically. Real sustainable communities, really communities that are resilient and communities that have a bright future, begin not from an episodic way, but from really engaging with issues at the core, and what some people might call the last mile, to adopt a communications and telecom term. How do you reach the folks in every neighborhood throughout, and how do you drive change throughout? And what we found is that for our companies, development really is local. About a third of American companies, all they do is invest in their local communities. And we would say that 6 out of every $10 that companies spend in terms of external affairs goes into local communities in total. In case you're wondering, 10% goes internationally and 30% goes to issues that transcend community boundaries. The other thing that we found, though, was that this was not just about philanthropy. Most companies, and there are some really highly qualified representatives throughout this room, so I'm saying things that a lot of you already know. Most companies really invest in terms of their people. Volunteerism, civic engagement, participating on nonprofit boards, engaging in public-private partnerships. In fact, in the survey, which you'll find in your packets, they rank giving actually as the third biggest strategy of what they do. And then the other thing that we found is that there's been a real philosophical sea change. And I think this is driven in part by the knowledge economy and by the way that workers are so mobile nowadays. In that it used to be that you would say community investment is spread across a broad spectrum of issues. Now, increasingly, what we're finding is that companies are concentrating on education, workforce development, entrepreneurship, job training. Do you see the theme? It's all about the knowledge economy. And we think that community development really is transitioning away from 1970s era focus on housing as the number one issue towards more of an idea about how do you develop human capacity. And then finally, and there are many other findings, of course, and happy to talk with you about more of these in depth. There's this stereotype that companies are looking to go global all the time. But 95% of the companies that we work with either want to maintain or expand their presence in their local communities. And there are a lot of very good reasons for that. And I think that what we really need to do is start not trying to impose a template on what we think companies are trying to do in this era of globalization, but actually look at what they really are trying to do, which is to make their communities as attractive as possible, really investing in quality of life, education, the capacity of their hometowns. So with that, let me briefly introduce our distinguished panel. First, I'd like to introduce Mary Wong. She is president of the Office Depot Foundation, and I've had the privilege of working with her as she has developed a new business case and strategy for the development of the foundation. Next to her are the Reverend Lionel Edmonds, the senior pastor of Mount Lebanon Baptist Church and co-founder and president of the Washington Interfaith Network, and Steve Wing, who's the director of government programs for CVS Caremark. And he has a very unique job description for his company. And Steve and I have talked about this. He is actually one of the few people in corporate America that I know of whose job really is to catalyze and crystallize public-private partnerships. And as a testament to his success, of the 180,000 employees of CVS Caremark, a third of them were formerly on welfare. A tremendous example of public-private partnerships in action. And last but certainly not least, we have Suki Sukamnuth, a social scientist and member of the Social Policy Research Associates Corporate Management Team, and she has a very interesting report in your packets as well. Their bios are included, so in the interest of time, I'm going to cut straight to the chase. And Mary, can you briefly share why Office Depot decided to establish the foundation, and also talk about why working with nonprofits to build their capacity is such an important core program for what you're trying to do?
Sure. First, I just want to say thank you, and thanks for having me here today. I think the title of this seminar today, or this session today, Compassion in Action, particularly after Memorial Day weekend, is appropriately named. Office Depot has decided to transition its corporate giving and make a very clear delineation of what is philanthropy, and truly ask that question, what is philanthropy, and what is marketing, and what is that ROI that we're looking on, and it's going to be aligned to initiatives that are with our marketing initiatives, and there is a difference. I've been doing this now for 8 years. I've been in retail for 25. And I think that overall, to be able to take that business case and to be able to look at it and say, what can we do with this and how do we go forward with it? Office Depot has created a foundation, and we're very excited about it. And there's basically three aspects to it. We believe collaboration, measurable metrics and results, and innovation is the basis of it. And it's nothing different than what was just said just now. And I think you're going to hear that consistently. The difference is that in saying all of these things, we are going to have to educate people on this, just as like 8 years ago, after when things started to happen, people don't understand how that means. They don't understand what that all, they think that their identity is going to be taken away. They think that their civil society sector, what does that mean? There's so many different names out there for what this all means. So how do we get them to collaborate? How do we get them to understand that if we work together for the better of the whole, we could impact a greater good? I would also like to say that what we also saw, what we're also seeing too, is that what is measurable impact? Does that mean that you have to have this great big thick report that no one will read? And that, quite frankly, that some of these smaller nonprofits have no means and have no dollars to be able to do? The answer is no. You can measure anything. The answer is that you measure it. You set your guidelines up. You put those in, and you work with that nonprofit, and you help them and you guide them as to what do you want to see. And thirdly, I would say innovation. I think it was just stated here, internationally they're doing some amazing things. But quite frankly, here in the United States, I don't think that we all understand how to give internationally. It's very, very complex. It's not as easy as it sounds. And how do we go about doing that? And here in the United States, there's also that mentality, well, we have our own issues. Why don't we do these things here? Well, we have to open our minds. So how do we get them to open their minds? And that requires education. So you have to take those baby steps in order to make that happen, and that is what our foundation is really starting out to do. I would just basically say, it's not fancy, it's not anything. Without a healthy community, you will not have a healthy business. And there's two words that come to mind. I think you need to believe in what you do, no matter what it is. It isn't always about money. It's not about what you give. It's about what you put into it, and the thought processes and the investment of time that you put into it, and partnership. And I think imagination and innovation are key. And lastly, I just think it's what you stand for. What do you want to stand for? Your company, you and your staff, your team, and quite frankly, localization giving is not going to go away. It can't go away, but you still have to help on a national basis. And how do you do that? And I think you're going to see some changes in that going forward.
And they have over 1,000 stores. Mary, just to follow up, how many nonprofit proposals do you get in a month?
5,000.
Excuse me?
We get 5,000 requests a month. We help over 1,400 to 1,500 nonprofit civil. See,
Just
that's
say what you want to say.
Nonprofits a year, and we have 2 people on staff.
And Mary, if folks like if a faith-based organization or a community organization wanted to work with you, what kind of tips would you give them about how to engage with you on, say, a community investment project?
I don't want to, and we're in the office supply business, so I don't want a great big binder full of all of that. I would prefer a 2-page executive summary. And that, thank you, Steve. That is the key. How do you write a business summary? How do you go to a corporation and ask for dollars? How do you go to the Small Business Administration and say, I want some money? I want you to invest in our organization, and I want us to partner together to make this. And this might sound a little simplistic, but quite frankly, I deal with these people in these organizations every day, and they need help, they need guidance. And the first win that you'll see is the day that they told us that we couldn't give 80,000 backpacks away to last year when we gave 1 million backpacks away, our millionth backpack away. I will tell you, it can be done. It's a matter of taking the time and sitting down and strategically thinking about how are you going to do this, and understanding what are the needs. And you can't help everybody. You just can't. So the bottom line is staying focused and very directed in what you're going to do, and partnering with my partners here. There's many of you out there, and I've had the pleasure of knowing many of you and working with a lot of you. And what we need to do is come together now and say, okay, this is what I can do. What can you bring to the table? And how can we make this a bigger impact?
And see, that's one of the things that I think we're seeing also in terms of a sea change, is that there's the mentality that you can go it alone, that you can do it by yourself, I think is totally changing. And people are increasingly saying, okay, we've got to move to a more networked environment where different organizations and different companies are able to bring their specific competencies and focus to the table, but at least they start coordinating with people in another discipline, so that there's more of a handoff and more of a sense that the left hand knows what the right hand is doing. And I think that that's a theme also that we're discovering very much here. Now, I'd like to turn it over to Reverend Edmonds and Steve Wing, and I'd like to ask if you could share your perspectives about how you built your relationship and why it's important to you, Steve, from CVS's perspective in terms of how it's benefiting the company, and Reverend Edmonds, why this relationship has been important for you in terms of how it's benefiting the community.
Well, thanks very much, Steve, and Jay, thank you for inviting us to come to this event today. This is an honor to be here. CVS Caremark, we're a $75 billion company. We just recently merged the two companies. We have 180,000 employees, and one of the things that we're most proud of is that 1 billion prescriptions are going to be filled this year at a CVS. And that's an awesome responsibility. And one of the things that you have to have is you have to have good people. And so that's part of our responsibilities in working in the communities, is to find good people that live right there in those communities. And I guess what I would say here is I would ask you a question, and I think you've already heard the answer a couple times, but I think it's so important that I would want to ask you to make sure that you really see this. Is what is the most important thing that you can do in developing those relationships between the faith-based and business? You need to develop what? And Mary talked about it. Steve talked about it. Gosh, we had a trip to Hawaii for 5 nights and 6 days for that one, but it's
I'll be happy to answer.
That's partnerships, right? Yeah. Partnerships it's so important. And really, the things that we've decided here is not really this isn't community relations. This is a business decision that we've made to be involved here, because we need good people, and it's hard to find good people. So by developing these relationships and these partnerships, that's what's happened. And in fact, the relationship that Reverend and Edmonds and myself and CVS started was back in 2001. And I was kind of frustrated because we were here in the Washington, D.C. I remember hearing that we were running ads in the local newspaper for hiring people, and we were looking for pharmacy technicians, and we ran several ads in the papers, and it's pretty expensive, if you know, as to run ads, and they were $30,000, $40,000 ads, and we got 0 people that applied with those ads. So I remember meeting Reverend Edmonds and being frustrated by that. And his comment to me was, well, we'll take care of that. Let's do a job fair at his church. And I thought, well, at first I wasn't really excited about going up into sanctuary to do the interviews, because I thought maybe lightning would strike or something, but it didn't. And that really was the start. We saw over 100 people. We were looking for 40 positions. We had over 100 people come to this event, and we ended up hiring 50 of those people. But 70 of them we had come back for second interviews and then hired the 50 people. But that was the beginning of that relationship that we've been able to form. And now, not only here in Washington, D.C., but around the country, we've been able to develop relationships in the inner cities and rural markets. With Reverend Edmonds' help, he a lot of times goes with me and helps me to make those introductions with those ministers. But it really gives us a competitive advantage. There was a book written several years ago called Blue Ocean Strategy, and in that book there was it talks about what is a competitive advantage to a company, and that's the blue ocean. This strategy that we're talking about here is Blue Ocean Strategy, and it's a Secretary Gutierrez, when he was talking about how important it is to business and working together, and not just writing a check, but it's really getting involved. That's what this is all about. We've in that whole relationship has been great. We've been able to do a couple things with this, because one of the things that Steve talked about was retention, and with our welfare to work programs, people are now moving up the career path. They're not just staying in dead end positions. These are not dead end jobs. These are positions that people can work up. But there's also other things that we have to share with them to help them to get that retention, and one of them is home ownership. And Reverend Edmonds, I remember several years ago, after he really took me under his wing, and he was showing me what they could do here in Washington, D.C. with affordable homes. And as we were looking at that, I could see that he really had a great idea here. And that what we do is we've teamed up with Freddie Mac and local banks around, and we started here in Washington, D.C. And then we used the Reverend Edmonds. His church then became the helped to run the program. If you think about inner city folks, a lot of times they don't trust the banks, and they certainly don't want they don't want to share their financial information to us. So by having the church involved in this, it's been excellent. And since we've done this, since we started this about a year and a half ago, we've now had over 30 people have closed on homes here, just in the Washington market. And we're now expanding it out to Los Angeles. We're going to be looking at Boston, Cleveland, Chicago areas to continue, Atlanta, to continue the program around the country. And also, we along with that, we've also put together a snowbird program where folks can go from one part of the country to the other. We're in 44 states plus the district. People can go from one part of the country to another. We have a lady that's in Rhode Island that her husband passed away. Her kids live in Texas. She can't. She has to work. So for her to get to Texas, I mean, she'd have to quit her job, go down there and try to find a job. Well, what she can do with us is she can transfer down to Texas, and then work down there and be with her kids and love up her grandkids, and then she'd go back to Providence to be with other family members. And that has really been a great program. And I think the last thing that I would say is that I know that Steve and Jay, you guys have been talking to us a little bit about immigration. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to continue that discussion with you, because I think that there's definitely an opportunity as the country grows, and as especially the Hispanic market grows. I mean, there is tremendous needs, and there's tremendous opportunity for us to be involved with you and talk more about that. And so I look forward to those opportunities, and then with that I would just pass it over to Reverend Edmonds.
Thanks. Thank you, Steve and Jay. The job fair was the hook that we used to establish common ground, a relationship, a culture of responsibility and sharing between between CVS and the faith community. So we had to have something that we could begin to understand one another with, and that was the job fair. And I know the corporations want good employees, and the community wants work. So the church was like a satellite employment center, HR department. We pre-screened. We had the job fair on a Sunday, and that kind of took care of the dress code. And then I did 2 or 3 sermons on the first thing God told Adam to do was go to work out in the garden. And then I told the folks, next Sunday CBS is going to be here, so dress appropriately. If you don't dress appropriately, we have casual sometimes at church, but I said, if you happen to have a tongue ring, take that out, or anything else like that. Now, see, I can say that, and they won't get offended, because I know their family, and I'm their pastor. If Steve would have said, well, Steve wouldn't have said it. He would have said, nice meeting you. We'll give you a call. So it goes back to there's 4 areas I think that faith communities can help corporations. Number 1, this is not a collection plate type of thing. This is advancing the community. So it's not a glorified welfare program. This is a workforce issue. I think work is sacred. And when people work, they feel better about themselves. So, yes, I want folks in the community to have work, not just any kind of work, but like with CVS, career advancement, career development. And that's very important. And so it's a workforce issue. And so we had the job fair at the church to establish a dialogue between the corporation and the faith community, because sometimes corporations have this thing about separation of church and state. And I'm telling you right now, that's an illusion when it comes to most churches, because we view everything as sacred. A job, work, is a good 4-letter word. And you got to get the language right. So the job fair is the hook to get the 2 parties into the room to start the dialogue. And then, once the dialogue is started, the faith community can help the corporate entity in 3 or 4 areas. One is to become a trusted partner. If the corporation is viewed as a trusted partner, then the church, the faith community, which is one of the gatekeepers of the city, gives the corporation access to government, access to the community, access to schools, or just 3 areas. It would take you forever to find the right politician to talk to over your zoning permit. But the church knows exactly who to talk to. The pastor knows exactly who to talk to downtown. The church also can give you exposure to your products. If the church says, this product is fine, or we trust this company, then that word gets out. And then on personal development, recruitment, retention, and skill development, I think that the problem with workforce development are the intangibles. The intangibles, things like lack of esteem, lack of drive, lack of purpose. These are the intangibles. I don't care what company it is, the company cannot deal with the intangibles. That's where the faith community comes in. The faith community, our expertise is the intangibles, the psychological impediments that cause folks not to want to get a check one week and not show up the next week, And so, and I think CVS and Steve are there out front, so far out front, in this understanding of the role the faith community can play in the advancement of the community, because they see it not as a handout. They see it as a part of their corporate strategy, and I think that's the key. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with this particular partnership, and I guarantee you that CVS may be out in front, but as more and more folks in the chambers hear about these kind of relationships, you're not going to be the only ones doing it.
Right.
I think
It'll be Red Ocean then.
Yeah, sorry, Steve, but I just think that one of the things that's also key here is the way that the church strengthens retention. we had an offline conversation before about the problem that they'd had with some of the other methods that they had for recruitment was that you had very high dropout rates. You might be able to hire people in, but they were leaving within a couple of months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. Reverend Edmonds makes them accountable to him. It's a whole different story. So it's
I'll tell the grandma on them.
that's right. This backbone that gets created here is incredible. In the interest of time, because what I'd like to do, I know we're kind of short, but if we can, I'd like to open it up for questions afterwards. Is Suki has done some very interesting research for the Department of Labor, and actually her report is in your packets. But I was wondering, Suki, if you could kind of run through some of the key findings that you'd like to highlight for everyone.
Great, thank you. Well, this is very exciting for me to be here and share this work with you because I've been immersed in it for the last year or so, and you know, what we have found really resonates nicely with what the other folks have already said, that these public-private partnerships benefit both businesses and communities. They benefit businesses because they can help stabilize their workforce, they can help expand their customer base, and they can help build positive community relations. And for communities, these public-private partnerships can improve career opportunities for individuals and working families. And so what I'm going to highlight is why businesses invest in these partnerships. What makes these partnerships particularly unique and special? Well, first, before I answer that question, I think it's important to look at the big picture. FBCOs, faith-based community organizations, which for this purpose comprise of congregations, denominational organizations, and other faith-based organizations, represent the third largest nonprofit sector in the U.S. next to healthcare and education. And together, these organizations have an estimated yearly expenditure that exceeds $47 billion. And congregations alone number 350,000. Now, these numbers of this magnitude attract attention. And in case we've lost you, did I get your attention with those numbers? And so these numbers also suggest that FPCOs can have an enormous influence in the communities and in the business practices, such as CVS right here. So why do they invest in these partnerships? And as others have already said, because there is a strong match between the business need and the FPCO mission. And businesses need to have faith that their workers are well trained, they have a strong work ethic, and that they believe these partnerships have the potential to maximize profit and productivity. And on the other side of it is FPCOs need to have faith that these partnerships are going to help people get good jobs and improve their lives. And so, but why FPCOs? What makes them particularly unique or special? Looking at the research, and I should tell you that we reviewed hundreds and hundreds of articles and reports and interviewed FPCO leaders to get their perspectives. So getting back to the question, why FPCOs? For one, there is a particular approach, and I think Reverend Edmonds talked about this a little bit, is that there's this holistic, compassionate, and personalized approach. The fact that he would tell on their grandma is very telling on that about that approach. They have the reputation of going the extra mile to build trust and to provide a safe space for emotional support and for personal healing. And FPCOs also have these extensive community connections, access to volunteers, a large membership that can be mobilized quickly. And these connections can help businesses not only gain access to new customers, but also, credibility among job seekers. And as already mentioned, they not only FPCOs not only provide businesses with well-trained workers, but also are able to take care of them after they are employed through other life needs such as childcare, transportation support. There's a company in Michigan called Cascade Engineering. They partnered with Michigan Family Assistance as well as other FPCOs, and they developed a coalition of providers in the community. One of the providers is an organization called Angel Wings, and they provide transportation support to those who have difficulty getting to work. And so these kinds of examples are very powerful and very interesting and suggest that that what the research says is true. um, uh, and there's a number. Our work showed that there's a number of strong FBCOs out there, and one that you may have heard of is an organization in Florida called Jobs Partnership. How many of you heard of? Okay, so I'm not going to talk too much about them. And so this organization is a result of a collaboration between a businessman and a pastor. And this model that they have is located in 27 cities. And so far, since its inception, they have placed about 1,500 folks. And they boast a retention rate of 80%. And what is unique about their model is that the churches, after they refer the candidates for jobs, they mentor them. And in addition, they've worked with businesses to appoint a job buddy once they're on the job, so to help the new hires adjust to their new positions. So what does this all amount to? We're talking about dollars and cents here. What are the benefits of these partnerships? And first and foremost is that the partnerships can save businesses money on hiring and training costs. For instance, the University of San Francisco Medical Center saved about $6,700 per hire through its partnership with Jewish Vocational Services. And in total, it saved about $81,000 through the 12 hires that it had made for clinic assistants. And in addition, Standard Aero, an aerospace jet engine repair facility in San Antonio, reported savings of $140,000 through its community partnership, savings in training costs through these partnerships. So we've talked about retention. That there's potential to have increased retention through these partnerships because, as I mentioned, there's the FBCOs have this unique approach that can kind of help take care of some of these other life needs, that child care, transportation, counseling, case management, et cetera. TJX Companies, a retailer, an international retailer, has hired well over 10,000 staff through its FBCO and nonprofit partners. And the company rep claims that these partnerships have candidates recruited from these partnerships have a 20 to 30% higher retention than other hires. CVS, you didn't mention this, Steve, has hired more than 30,000 people formerly on public assistance, and more than 18,000 of them are still employed in career track positions. And the company also boasts of a 60% retention, which is very impressive given the high turnover in that particular industry. So I think I'm going to end there and just end by saying that our research suggests that these business and FBCO partnerships are constantly evolving, and there's growing momentum at the ground level to promote these collaborations, and that these examples reveal that FBCOs are well positioned to work with businesses and job seekers to help meet dual objectives.
Okay. Do I have time to take questions? Okay, I can take a couple of questions. Yes.
Could I ask to talk a little bit more about CPS and the faith group? You talked about financial literacy or something about that. Could you talk a little bit
Home
more
ownership. Yeah, we met up with Freddie Mac, and they what they do is for an employee that's worked for us for 2 years, they can get a low interest rate loan. It's 1.5% below prime. For a new home. And what they do is they go through an orientation. The orientation is done through Reverend Edmonds and his church. He has a retired real estate executive that is that runs the program. And so then our people sign up for this orientation class. What they do is they check to see how their financial records and make sure that they're good, that they have good credit. If they do, then they go right on to the process. If they're not, then they work with them on repairing that credit. And so, like I said, we have over 30 people that have closed on homes in the last year and a half. Plus, we have about 80 people that are in the pipeline that are in the process of getting their home loan. So that definitely is a retention tool. And we always hear about, especially now, there's a lot of foreclosures going on right now. And so we think that this is the right way to go about it, because when the church is involved in it, this isn't a fly-by-night program. This isn't something that's going to put someone into a home that they can't afford. This is something that they're going to really work with them to make sure that this is the right fit.
You know, one of the things that I like about this is the promise for wraparound services. You get your job, you get your life skills training, you get financial skills training, you get a loan, you get a house. The whole concept really plays into this idea of no neighborhood left behind.
Steve, can I talk about that real quick, 1
Sure.
second? Once a person, entry level, gets into a job with CVS at the entry level, the church, I have a connection with about 70 churches in the district, about 100,000 members in the organization. And so once the worker gets an entry-level position in the church, in CVS, then the church becomes a satellite learning center where that CVS employee can begin to learn about home ownership. A partner of mine, Charles Williams, stand up for a minute, Charles. Charles and I are developing a distant learning center where a person can come and take college courses, get accreditation, get certification in web design and other things, so that the church is a satellite university, CVS University, and so within 3 or 4 years, they can get their college degree, as well as having a job, buying a home. And so it really is a wraparound. It's more than life skills, it's life enhancement. It's life enhancement.
Great. I think we have time for one more question. Yes, please.
I'm Kathy Saley from Lutheran Services in America, and formerly a community organizer with Industrial Areas Foundation and in Phoenix. And so my questions for Pastor Edmonds and Mr. Wing. In the spirit of community organizing and doing this community development, it's not just the services for, but also the partnership with and the leadership development. And I'm wondering if you've had any experience, particularly in the DC area, in neighborhood preservation and working in a nonpartisan way, political allies, and
Well, I used
working
to be
in
Lutheran
keeping
before I
this-
became Baptist.
And I used to do Catholic Charities.
Fort Wayne, Indiana.
It's a great big.
Fort Wayne, Indiana, Lutheran Missouri Center. We had soccer out every Wednesday at school. Yes, the IAF organization here is called the Washington Faith Network, and I'm a co-founder of that and president. And right now we have a $1 billion neighborhood investment fund in Washington, D.C. that we negotiated with the city on, connected to the big development going on around here. And the fund is for economic development, affordable housing, schools, libraries, and the leadership of the churches, lay and clergy, were the ones who pressed the elected officials in the city to create this.
In fact, we've done pretty well with that, and I was just talking to Reverend Edmonds today that we're going to be talking about that here in Washington, D.C., and then start to get those models and then take them around the country, get other companies involved in that too.
Before we wrap up, I have one last real quick question, and I'd like to ask, starting with Suki, we've just scraped the tip of the iceberg on all the information that's here. If someone wants to find out more information, is there a website or email address they can go to find out from your perspective?
They can contact Department of Labor's Center for Faith-Based and Community Initiatives. Scott Schortenhauser, my colleague over there, he's been wonderful, instrumental in helping develop these materials. He's over there.
Okay, Steve and Reverend Edmonds, if they want to find out more about your programs?
After the meeting, I'll be here and I've got my card. We can give you my card and we can get you information that you need. Or you can go on cvs.com too.
And my email is edmonds4@AOL.com. EDMONDS4@AOL.com, and I have some cards here too. And I'm here in the city, I'm here in Washington, D.C., and I work with Steve all over the country, so wherever you are, there's more than likely a CVS somewhere around you and a church somewhere around you. So, we can easily come to where you are.
Yeah. Now, Mary, I don't want to inundate you. I know you get a lot of proposals for
that's not
things and
the-
stuff like that. But
yeah,
but if
but-
people want to find out more about the foundation
Yeah.
or to work with you, how would they do that?
I don't think that's the point. I
Okay.
think the point is that we decided to change the format. And the format is really to help make the needle move, so that we can come back and say, this is what we did. So there's a clear, the amount isn't gonna change. And hopefully, I think that, hopefully that someday we can say it would. But you can reach me at mary.wong@officedepot.com for right now. And until we're going to relaunch the website. But I wanna thank you because of you and you, we came up with our new 5x5 program, and that program will be announced shortly. And that program, I think, will be very exciting because it will be a collaborative effort, because there's so much information out. Listen to this. There's so much great information out there. And I'm sure that this is just one company. I'm just another company. It's how do you grasp it all, and how do you get it so that everybody can figure out what to do with it? That's the key, and that's what we need to do.
Please join me in thanking our distinguished panel.
Yes, you did, that's pretty good information.
Oh, one last thing. If you want to find out more about us, it's uschamber.com/BCLC.
Thank you, panel. Thank you, Stephen. Entrepreneurial leadership and action and thought. You served us well, and it is just the tip of the iceberg. I would like to invite the next panel to join us and take respective seats. Do we have 4 of you, which means, Gary, you get the podium as well. Let me introduce the chairman very briefly of this panel, Gary Blank. My colleague at the White House is Chief of Staff at the Council of Economic Advisors, which is the thought engine behind the president's economic policy, beginning with him, of course. He's the real engine. We're, I guess, the fuel for that engine, and Gary leads that effort, and he will now lead this panel. Pleased to have you. Thank you, Jay. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome again to all of you. As Jay mentioned, I'm the Chief of Staff at the Council of Economic Advisors. What we spend a lot of our time doing is working on macro, big picture issues, and you will hear the President from time to time talk about how he wants the government to help set the right environment to encourage economic growth and prosperity for all citizens and long-term growth. And so what's exciting for me is we work on a lot of those macro issues, but as economists would say, you all are working on the micro issues, which is just sort of their fancy academic way of saying they try to actually make it work on the ground and on the front lines. And so I'm excited to do some light moderating and let our panelists take care of the rest. So I'll give very brief introductions and just let them start with the rest. We have George McDonald from New York City, who is with the Doe Fund that does homeless and mental health and prisoner reentry issues and services, and George has been a longtime advocate in New York. We have Joe Gaskins with us here locally from Maryland with the Economic Development Training Institute. Joe has an extensive background in small business issues and now works in community development and housing. We have Dan Buck with us from St. Louis at the St. Patrick Center that works on homeless services, and Dana Ingram from Georgia that works on housing and financial services issues with JC Vision and Associates. Each of them are leaders in their organizations and leaders in their fields and their local communities, and I'll let them take it from there.
Great. So I'll go first alphabetically. I got the short straw out the back. I want to thank the Secretary again. You may have seen I shook his hand 3 times. That was one for each $1 million that he gave us. As you, real quickly too, just so I kind of have an informal poll, how many are from the actual private sector like myself in the faith-based community? Okay, and how many from the government sector? Good, good. I was hoping we'd get a good balanced mix, and that's what it looks like we have. Thank you, Director Hine, number one, for letting me come. I'm very humbled to be, the leader of an organization like St. Patrick's Center, and the fact that that people do look to us as a national model. I wish I could take credit for it, but it existed long before I got there, and it will exist long after I'm gone. It's an amazing institution that has grown, as our founder will tell you, from a pot of coffee in a room full of drunks to what it is today of 22 programs and a $10.7 million operating budget and a partnership center that's truly unique. I just want to begin by saying that in relation to social services and employment and training and affordable housing, I believe that faith-based and community organizations and government as standalone entities are truly ships without rudders. We see that we alone as an agency can only skim the surface of the poverty issues we're facing in St. Louis, and I'm sure every organization from every community could say the same thing. Working independent of one another, working within our silos, and being truly independent away from government resources and government support is not conducive to innovation, it is not conducive to collaboration, and it certainly is not conducive to producing meaningful results and outcomes. 8 years ago, St. Patrick's Center recognized that we still had significant gaps in our services. We had 14 good, well-meaning programs that were working and operating independently, very limited government resources at the time. We had very little health care services. We had no GED or substantial educational programs. We saw that we were losing people during the referral process when we were moving people around through the network of supports from silo to silo to silo. And our executive director at the time, Leo Parody, dreamed big. He thought very innovatively, very outside the box. He dreamed of a partnership center. He dreamed of a one-stop care facility where we could break out of our silos and we could bring multiple agencies. 12 to 15 agencies is what his initial strategic plan called for. People called him crazy. They said he'd never be able to do such a bold vision. 6 years later, not only are we operating that 100,000 square foot partnership center with 12 active partners and soon to be 14, clients now do have a comprehensive medical clinic, which includes chiropractic and dental services. We offer both GED courses and a computer training course that is taught by the community college. But because of the increased capacity of this new facility, we've also been able to increase our own capacity, our own programs. We've grown from 14 to 22 programs. We've gone from $5.7 million to a $10.7 million agency in those 6 years. Our list of daily government partners today are HUD, DOL, DOJ. We're still working on HHS, where we hope to get something soon. We have a great capacity grant in now. We work with the Social Security Administration directly. Our state mental health department comes in our facility on a regular basis and works with our clients. We work directly with our state corrections, the city human services department, as well as our local mental health board. And that's just the partners on the first 3 floors. The 4th and 5th floors are perhaps not only the newest, but the most innovative thing we've ever done. That is the Department of Commerce joint effort along with Catholic Charities of St. Louis, which is a $5 million capital project to build a small business incubator and a trades training center for our clients. Training that would include electrical, plumbing, pipe fitting, light automotive, taught by a local well-respected Rankin Technical College. But just think of that for a moment. The Department of Commerce investing in a homeless agency. I have business leaders tell me that makes absolutely no sense. I'll tell you why it makes sense, and it's because I think any good economist, Gary will tell you, any good economic development researcher will say that the success of any urban revitalization effort has to begin by addressing the needs of the poor and those people who are destined to live within that urban core. We know through the experience of 24 years of dealing with this population that if you can establish them as a well-trained, properly housed workforce, they are critical to economic growth in any region, especially in St. Louis, that is seeing a resurgence in downtown. And we like to feel that St. Patrick's Center has been an economic stimulus and a real partner in that growth downtown. We put over 1,400 people to work a year through our job training programs. We know that we are changing lives, but more importantly, we're changing the economic landscape of downtown St. Louis. But still, why a homeless partnership with DOL? With Department of Commerce. More people would say, wouldn't that fit better that Commerce would invest in a Department of Labor Workforce Center, which are good. As you all know, the WIBs have created some great jobs and great economic stimulus. However, for our population, it isn't just a job these people need. It isn't just an education that these people need. The complex demands of our clientele and our population cross all sectors and all barriers. We're talking substance abuse issues, mental health issues. Many have no independent living skills such as budgeting and parenting and how to live independently. Many are ex-offenders who don't know how to cope coming out of prison after a lengthy stay. Most typical DOL WIBs don't know how to deal with those issues. The Partnership Center and St. Patrick's Center does. Department of Commerce recognizes that. They recognize that they needed to partner somewhere to build a job training program that brought more than just job training, that brought a comprehensive approach to helping people truly lift their lives up and move forward. And this type of wraparound one-stop recovery and a personal empowerment approach is working for thousands of clients, and it's going to work even better as we get the Trades Training Center up and running. In closing, I just want to say that taxpayers expect us and really demand of us that we work smarter and we work better. And I think as government people in the room, I think you need to look at the value that faith-based organizations truly bring to those taxpayer dollars. I would think that the government would, I know that taxpayers are thrilled when government invests in things they care about, when they invest in the community of which they have. At St. Patrick's Center, we bring 2 private dollars to every government dollar we get. Only 33% of that $10.7 million operating budget comes from government resources. We receive both private foundations, corporations, and private donor contributions that exceed $6 million. EDA's capital investment of $3.5 million that you heard was preceded by $12.5 million of private money that we raised to start the Partnership Center when we couldn't get government to invest in the early stages. We're glad they're helping us complete the Partnership Center. I should also point out that our board of directors has 14 major corporations represented on that board. Direct community corporate involvement. I am blessed to have a board of directors member with me today, a guy who flew me out here so that the agency would not have to bear the expense, and that's Dave Peacock, the Vice President of Administration for Anheuser-Busch, and he also has brought his Vice President of IT, Joe Castellano, who are both back there, and they'll tell you why they did it. And I encourage any corporations in the room to talk about why they invest $300,000 a year in our mission. But part of it is because they know it makes good economic sense. They know the community in which their headquarters are headquartered. Playing back to what was said in the previous panel, a healthy community means a healthy business. They invest in the community in which they live, their children go to school, they go to the ballpark, but Anheuser-Busch gets it. They understand corporate responsibility, and if you're not investing at a sizable sum like Anheuser-Busch does, I ask you to really look at your business model a little more closely and see if you're doing enough in the communities in which you operate. And finally, just a final thing, 3 very simple thoughts. Let's all break out of our silos, including the faith-based community, but also at the government level. Partnerships are great at the community level, but they'd be even greater if they were happening at the government level a little more effectively. That we could have one grant application, one grant review process, and have a comprehensive case management plan that all of us could be proud of, from government down to the faith-based communities. And also I would just encourage you to invest in innovation and invest in what's working. And that goes for philanthropists as well as government. We are throwing some money away at some organizations that don't have accountability and outcomes. So that's it. Thank you.
Here I am, and there's a young lady here.
You have
with
5
yellow-
to 7 minutes.
With yellow cards. So if I'm talking fast, it's not because I'm from New York, it's I want to beat those cards. I actually run a 501c3, not-for-profit, but my faith was instilled in me as an altar boy at St. Catherine's Church in Spring Lake, New Jersey, which is sometimes referred to as the Irish Riviera. And I would serve Mass, and then I'd go over and eat breakfast with the priest, and then walk down to the grammar school, where the nuns would teach me that you use a ruler for more than one thing. So that's where my faith came from, and that's where the faith of the Doe Fund is based on, my religious training. I wound up in Grand Central Terminal in 1984 and 1985, feeding homeless folks every night at 10 o'clock. There were 700 of them lined up outside on 43rd and Vanderbilt Avenue, the richest, most densely populated part of our country and the world, and here were all these people laying around. I did that for 700 nights in a row, and I heard what they had to say. And while they thanked me for the sandwich and the milk, they said, what we really want is a room and a job to pay for it, a room and a job to pay for it. And I heard that over and over and over again until it led me to think about how can I put together a program that will provide them with an opportunity to work, because that's what I heard that they wanted to do. Now, call me crazy, because, of course, these were the most marginalized people doing crack cocaine, had in and out of prison, no education, marginalized when they were 12 or 13 years old, and there they were. And I said, okay, we can do this. And so I harassed the Koch administration, which was then Ed Koch, former congressman, was the mayor, and he was running for re-election. And so he gave me a contract with the HPD, the Housing Preservation and Development Department, that I could use these homeless folks to go renovate vacant city-owned apartments in occupied buildings for homeless families to move in. And they would pay me, and I would pay the people, and thus was the birth of the first revenue-generating program for formerly homeless people in America, where we actually went out and did the work every day, got paid for it, I paid them, we paid the program costs, no grants, no nothing, okay? And in 1990, that started in 1990. He lost the election, but I got the program. In 1991, I was called down here by the first Bush administration to be given an award for this innovative idea of using homeless folks to create housing for other homeless folks. And Jack Kemp and Louis Sullivan gave me the award, and that was great. And then immediately after that, I started getting money from HUD and the federal government, which was, now think about this. This is a year and a half after I had helped people that nobody else thought had any value at all in our society. I'm down here in a room getting an award from the top of our government. So if that doesn't affirm the fact that good ideas implemented well will get attention, no matter what and I had no money in my pocket then. Trust me, we had no money except we had to go out and we did the work. We went on to expand to do many other things. Street cleaning, for example. We now have the largest street cleaning operation in America. You see business improvement districts, it's just like that. Our guys are in blue uniforms with the American flag on their sleeve, and we clean 150 miles of New York City sidewalks every day. We've expanded to Philadelphia, to Jersey City. I have to tell you, today we do $82 million in revenue. 90% of that is in program services, 7% is in administration, and 3% is in fundraising. We have 45,000 people who send us money in the metropolitan area and beyond. We have the support of not only HUD now, but the Department of Labor, the Department of Justice, and other ancillary things. The federal government is fully behind us in our reentry work, which is critical to the future of these issues, in my opinion. And in your package, you'll see this, and it's called a performance update, and it shows you that we have a total graduates of almost 3,000 now. The 6 months retention rate is almost 62%. But the important thing is that our guys get jobs at $9.85 an hour. That's the average. And we get all different sectors employ our folks. And, you know, here you see Avis and CBS Outdoor and Flick, and it goes on and on. We've developed our own revenue-generating businesses. Pest at Rest is one. The Bug Stops Here. We train guys to do exterminating work, and we do that, and we generate revenue for that, and then we get them jobs at $13 and $14 an hour. You know, it's a lot to compress into a little bit of time. That's why I do need to take the time to tell this story right. But for me, it's all worked. Everything those nuns taught me came true. All you have to do is believe it. And what we do is we transition people into the greatest economic system, the greatest social program there ever was, a job in America. Thank you very much.
Thank you, George. Joe?
Joe, got you. Hey, good evening, everyone. I am the CEO and Executive Director of Economic Development and Training Institute, which is located just outside of downtown Washington, D.C. We run two basic components there that are instrumental in kind of changing the landscape of the community in which we serve. We do the housing program. In the housing program, we have four basic components of that. One is the ETI, Affordable Housing Initiative. And this initiative actually provides affordable housing to low-income individuals and disadvantaged individuals, single mothers with children. In that program, we purchase homes at a discount from HUD, and we then resell them to individuals who would not otherwise be able to get into the home market. Along with that, we provide jobs through our business component side. Now, we run the EDTI Help Somebody program, and this is a mentoring and training and technical assistance component that we've implemented for comprehensive neighborhood empowerment programs in targeted areas. And we, again, address this for low-income and disadvantaged youth who are unemployed, underemployed, or underpaid, or who need training, help, and assistance. Then we run what we call the Real Smart Home program, where the kids and the families in the homes are smart individuals because they have computers. We provide computers for them, and then we provide training as well on how to use those particular computers. Then the last component of that housing component is the youth development program, and in that program, we actually develop young kids in the construction industry, so they are actually be able to get out on site, learn how to be a carpenter, a plumber, electrician, those high-end paying jobs that they would not otherwise have access to if they didn't have access to an entity that would actually show them how to get there. And then the major component, the one that we've spent a lot of time trying to get off the ground and finally got off, and probably is our most proud program, is the business program development component. And in that one, we do have an incubator that we service 30 businesses within the incubator, and we service another 60 individuals on average on a monthly basis by providing them technical assistance services. And then we go back to the collaborative thing too, because we'd never be able to do this. Initially when we started, they told, and by I mean the community, everybody that we went to in order to open a private incubator told us we'd never make it work. And then they also said, well, maybe if you focus on one of the two, housing or business, you might be successful in terms of do that. But now we kicked it off first with Verizon, actually, with a technical assistance grant. And they came in, and it worked because at that particular point it allowed us to go to Maryland Department of Business and Economic Development to do a feasibility study, which we could not pay for because it cost $30,000 just to do the feasibility study. And from there, we were able to then convince other individuals to come on board from a business perspective, and that was SBA as a partner with us, and Joe Lodo down there has been tremendous in terms of supporting us and providing technical assistance as well. We've got Paychecks as a partner with us too, and they teach classes at the facility. They're now big partner who came in to help us was U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. They came in and OCS. They came in and provided 3 grant components for us, which was critical in terms of reaching the masses of the community in which we need the assistance but would not otherwise get it. Now, this was critical because the components that we're trying to kick off grant, you could not get the funding from any place otherwise unless you had quite a bit of funds to be able to do this with. And because HHS awarded us the grant, we were able to kick off an aquaculture facility located right outside of Washington, D.C. here in Suitland Cross from Andrews Air Force, raising tilapia, bass, and other fish species inside of 10,000-gallon tanks, and people said you were crazy too. But also a component of that.
It's a theme here.
Yeah, theme. You're right. You're
I've
crazy.
talked to that
these days, right? But it's good because when all these things start to come together, it proves that it works. And now the state of Maryland comes in and they says, okay, we love it, so we'll give you an aquaculture grant to a bond bill in order to fund it. And then the other project, one of the other projects that HHS helped us with, was a restaurant and a seafood retail component as well. And that entity was extremely important because it provided 40 jobs to low-income individuals, and that's critical in terms of the restaurant industry. Now that's being kicked off, and the good thing about that is because we had an HHS there to kick off from the beginning. Prince George County told me on 2 weeks ago that they're willing to put $600,000 in, coming from their block grant funds. So you get a few to come in, and then you build, and it works. Now, what we are doing on average over a 3-year period is providing free technical assistance to individuals who want to be in business, directly to individuals, some who have been in business but have not had the capacity to break through or not had the capacity to work out of a business center and not get direct support from accountants, legal, all the technical components. All of it is being provided there, and it costs them no money. Now, the other critical component on this one was Innovative Bank and Superior Bank. Those two individuals came in because we had now kicked it off, and it looked like we were going somewhere, but we were missing a small component, and that was access to financing that we could do basically and turn around a loan within a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. I think most of those guys are now giving us a week, and they're either denying or granting a loan. And that was extremely critical because small businesses don't have the capacity to do that. We're doing now from $5,000 to $50,000 in those particular areas. The state of Maryland, HHS, HUD, all of them were vital in us being successful. So that's what we do as a community development organization.
Thank you, Joe. Dana?
Good afternoon. My name is Dana Ingram. I'm the Executive Director and founder of JC Vision and Associates. As you know, we are a faith-based organization, 501c3, established in March of 2000. The organization is located in the good city of Hinesville, Georgia. They'll be glad when I said that, because I'm an import from the north. JC Vision started off with one volunteer, hello, and a board of directors, and a budget of $2,500. That was my retirement fund. Within 7 short years, JC Vision has increased its staff capacity to 6 full-time and its operating budget to just under $400,000. During JC Vision's first year in operation, we were able to provide financial literacy services and home ownership services to about 500 clients. And due to the community investment made by Department of Housing and Urban Development, JC Vision has been able to educate and provide services to over 150,000 residents living in 18 Southeast Georgia counties. HUD's investment has helped JC Vision to become a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, a fair housing initiative program provider, and a community housing development organization. And I wanted to talk about one of the projects that we had done. In 2004, HUD made another community investment through JC Vision by awarding us a 3-year Rural Housing Development Grant. The grant was for $398,000 and enabled us, as a CHODO, to develop 2.5 acres to include implementation of water, sewage, and a road infrastructure, and to construct 9 single-family detached houses or homes. With the grant and HUD's investment, JC Vision was able to coordinate an additional $700,000 to complete the project. $89,000 came from the Georgia Department of Community Affairs in down payment assistance, $16,000 from Housing Assistance Council for program salaries, and $600,000 of investment from local banks for construction cost. The $1.5 million project was very successful, and JC Vision was able to employ local contractors, created 25 new jobs, and increased the tax base for the rural community. Currently, 8 of the 9 houses or homes are are sold, and one is under contract, and I think I have a closing tomorrow at 3 o'clock. So hopefully my plane arrives on time. All homes were sold to low to moderate income households. Each constructed home was handicap accessible, 1,400 square feet with 3 bedrooms, 2 baths. Each homeowner received budgeting and housing counseling to understand home ownership, their responsibility, and to prevent from future foreclosure. Upon move-in, each homeowner had at least $10,000 worth of equity in their home. The project was accomplished in 8 months, 8 months earlier than due, so we were 8 months ahead of schedule. The future of JC Vision is outstanding. I like to say that again. The future of JC Vision is outstanding. Due to the successful development project, a local landowner has donated 4 out of 8 acres for the next development project. The goal is to construct 25 to 30 single-family detached homes targeted for low to moderate income, first-time home buyers. We'll be coordinating community investors such as HUD, USDA Rural Development, Georgia Department of Community Affairs, local bankers, and private donors. Our goal is to have the homes constructed by October 2009. In closing, JC Vision is looking to continue its partnership with HUD and other community investors to provide housing counseling, comprehensive housing counseling, and helping households to achieve the American dream through home ownership. Also, we will be helping other nonprofits develop programs such as JC Vision has been able to create. Currently, we have just received $142,000 from USDA RCDI to help a local nonprofit, Sam's Memorial, to provide housing counseling and become a HUD-approved housing counseling agency, just for the county of McIntosh. Other investment organizations have, and they're governmental. Department of Treasury has invested in us. We help people resolve tax issues with the IRS. We also have a VITA site where we help people prepare their taxes for free. And a lot of times when they prepare their taxes for free, they say, what do we do with our return? Of course, we talk about home ownership. One of the other things that we have done, USDA has also invested in us for home ownership and training also. We're also looking to, we've already helped to create 4 new profits, separate entities from JC Vision Associates, and we've also helped to start 3 new for-profit businesses. And that's all I have.
Thank you very much. Well, first, a big thank you to our 4 panelists who did a great job of condensing your success stories down into the allotted time. We all have not met before, but you all are success stories. And I just, a quick yes or no answer from each of you. Were you successful on day 1, on the first day? I'm going to guess no.
No.
Yes. With an explanation.
And then the other thing that I noticed is you all talked about a variety of state and local governments that you work with, of course, in addition to the federal government. Unless I missed one, I counted up 7 different federal agencies that you all mentioned in your remarks: Commerce, HUD, Justice Department, Labor Department, HHS, Treasury, and the Agriculture Department, which I think is just sort of a reminder to all of us of, you know, the diverse set of opportunities out there, and you all breaking down sort of the stereotypes of working with government and, you know, some suspicion and skepticism that folks might have and to persevere in those partnerships.
And can I just address, too, to the government officials, I think there's some stereotypes within the faith-based and community organizations that need to be broke down, too. I think sometimes we are painted as non-business-like, unable to have the capacity to manage your complex grants. There is a real push, a real movement, conference after conference among faith-based organizations that nonprofit doesn't have to mean no profit, that we do have to run our organizations like companies and corporations. We're turning more to a business model with our board of directors. No longer are we filled with social service people and social workers on our board. We're learning and leaning to corporate executives like Dave Peacock from Anheuser-Busch, who runs a multi-level corporation worldwide. He's on there to advise us to make good business decisions and hold us accountable to good business practices. We're not alone. That is a trend among nonprofits. We We are growing in our capacity. We are growing in our ability to service your grants and deliver the outcomes you require. So just to kind of take that off your radar screen that somehow faith-based and community organizations don't have the capacity to do what you ask, I assure you we can do it as well as any for-profit entity.
And can I do the yes answer real quick? Well, but it's true though, because we started, as I said, with the HPD, which is Housing Preservation and Development Department of the City of New York. And they had a contract that had existed before for day labor, for ex-offenders, for immigrants, for, the program existed. We married it with housing and not paying the people at the end of the day and drug tests and all of that kind of thing. But it was an existing program. So people didn't think that the folks that we were trying to help could actually do the work. You see, I mean, not that they were, that every reason in the world except that they really would take advantage of an opportunity. So we started out removing rubbish from apartments, and that requires the HPD to put a dumpster outside of that apartment. Well, we filled up all of the dumpsters the first morning in the first 2 hours, and all they did was complain that we have to order more dumpsters, and we've never had to work this. Now I'm not criticizing the government officials, believe me. These are the people in New York. They're not there anymore. But we did more than they ever expected on the first day, and that really cemented what it was that I was trying to prove, that the people were ready, willing, and able to work. They just needed an opportunity.
So I think it's about 4:45. We have about 15 minutes to take questions. And so unless Dana or Joe had anything to add on the yes/no question, happy to go to audience questions. Go ahead in the back.
My question is with regard to the home ownership programs that you and the counseling programs that you've put in place. What innovative things have you done in terms of partnership in areas where the housing inventory is so high that it's outside of the federal guidelines for low to moderate income housing?
One of the things that we did was we went ahead and solicited from the Georgia Department of Community Affairs. They had a program called the Single Family Detached Home Ownership Program, and where the pricing on housing was very high. When we first started our project, and this is just show comparable, we purchased our land, and within that same year, it went up 3 times as much. So what we had to do was look at what can we help to help the cost so the person could move in, and we got the down payment assistance program, where we offered each one of our homeowners $22,000 worth of down payment, which actually helped to bring down the cost of their loan, so it made it affordable. So what they were paying in rent was something that they now can own a home in.
And our areas, the first area, which was the $1 home program, where we bought the HUD foreclosures, and then we invested dollars into those homes, totally bought them back, most of the time renovating entirely the existing homes and then putting those houses back on the market for resale, and providing, in some cases, 100% of the closing costs as well, but also using Maryland State programs that will provide up to $10,000 in terms of closing help as well. So Prince George County. Now, what happened with that particular program, because of that, I think there was a cut on it. But now we are in the process of gaining asset control areas, which is a larger component, which would be able to handle Prince George County and maybe Charles County and other counties as well locally here, and that we expect to implement that within the next year, which will be a much larger component. But we'll use those same innovative components with providing the closing help and assistance as well.
And one of the other things that JC Vision is looking to do is, because housing costs are continually going up, to get approved by HUD to maybe be able to put a third mortgage on the home at 0%. So the only time that portion has to be paid is if they sell the house, foreclose on the house. So then that becomes even more affordable. So we're in the process of doing that now.
I think defining affordable housing is going to be key too. I think one of the things that a coalition of providers is looking at in St. Louis, it's called the PUSH Coalition, Partners United in Support of Housing. we're looking at prefab homes, which are about a third of the cost, and we can create them more quickly in a more streamlined fashion. Little pushback, obviously, from city developers who want everything to have foundations. I think FHA modernization, if it goes through, is going to help us tremendously at HUD. If that modernization goes through, to allow us to get mortgages on lower quality, I guess, homes, but still 25 to 35-year guarantees from the manufacturers, that can solve a lot of questions. We're looking at one model right now that's about a 600 square foot, one bedroom home, and its total cost is $35,000. So that kind of affordability would be one thing. And the other thing I think is low-income housing tax credits. We're not in the game yet. I think we need to get in the game. I think faith-based and community organizations need to become developers ourselves and take advantage of low-income housing tax credits and create more affordable housing with those resources.
There was a question from a gentleman here in the middle. Did you?
I was wondering if they're doing stick-built houses down in your area.
We actually,
You were using some people in training programs as they were doing as well.
we actually did both. We did the modular homes. We did 2 of the modular homes, and then we did 7 of the stick-built. Initially, because there weren't a lot of trained people to do those modulars by setting them correctly, foundations correctly, we went ahead, well, they did them correctly, but I wasn't satisfied with the services that were provided in the contractor, so I went to stick-built because I saw that there was more people to be available to do the job correctly. And one of the requirements we had with our contractors was you had to hire locally to keep the dollars locally.
Other questions? Ma'am, there in the middle.
Yes, my name is Bridget Flood. I'm with the Incarnate Word Foundation in St. Louis. And I was wondering at St. Patrick's Center with your business incubator, what exactly is your goal in terms of, is it micro enterprise? Is it the homeless people are going to start companies, or St. Patrick's Center are going to start new businesses, or
No.
what's
Total private enterprise. What we want to address primarily is businesses that are going to target the growth of downtown, the sectors and the needs of the new growing downtown. For those of you not familiar, there's a real revitalization of downtown St. Louis that's going to create anywhere between 18 and 35,000 new residents to downtown is the 5-year projected growth. They need services. So we're looking at catering companies, housekeeping companies, people who will come in and do handyman type work, light electrical, light plumbing, entrepreneurs who might have existing businesses in the county and rural areas who might want to come in and invest in providing services to that downtown growing residential community. And then also some professional trades folks, people who can provide services to our clients such as disability attorneys, healthcare providers, other types of professional industries that a bank, credit union, you talked about, that's a big need. As people graduate from the Trades Training Center, we'd love for them to be able to go across the hall and get some credit union services.
Sure.
Hi, Greg Stanton, Walls Without Walls. This is George McDonald, also a New Yorker, and I really appreciate the John Doe Fund and are ready, willing, and able to work. I think you've twisted my arm a couple of times, and I've given you a couple of bucks here and there. Great job. This is a more difficult question, and just asking you where you think you may be going if you look back into the incarceration process, where we're having a larger group of minority and African American drug offenders. Is there a way to, and there's a great program in New York, Breaking the Chains, by a Brookings scholar, which is decriminalizing first use or whatever, second use of drug use, not drug sale. Is there a John Doe program that can go back into the incarceration period to have their self-esteem and well-being be developed alongside the John Doe program?
Well, thank you for your kind comments and of course, your contributions.
Support of all kinds. Welcome.
But here's what we do now. I looking forward for what I want to specifically do and focus my energies on in the future are helping minority men, principally African Americans, get a job when they come home from serving their debt to society. Because, as Jay mentioned before, 2/3 of them are going to wind up back in prison in 3 years. So they'll never be fathers to their children. They'll never contribute economically to our society. And it's an injustice, not one that we caused, not one that we're responsible for, but one as a country that we still have an outstanding burden, as you would say. It's something that we have to deal with. We go into the Queensboro prison in Queens, New York, as they come down from upstate, from the penitentiaries that they're in, and we work with them for 3 months before they're released, and then they're released into our program. What we've done is, everybody knows how difficult it is citing facilities for anything other than, I don't have to describe what the other than is. But anything that we want to do in citing facilities is very difficult, involves lawsuits and protests and death threats and everything that you could possibly imagine. We've started a program for people who come out on parole who have a place to live. So suppose they live with their mother or their sister or some family member or the mother of their children, whoever it is. If it's approved by parole, then they can come into our program and work, and we pay them and do the drug testing and all of the other ancillary services, but they don't have to live in our facility, which allows us to serve more people. And I think that that's the answer. That's at least the answer for us, and that's where I want to devote your contributions to in the future. I think it's a public safety issue too. I think it's a public safety issue for all of us too. You can't ignore the fact that if a guy is going back to prison, if 2 out of every 3 are going back to prison, they're going back to prison because they committed a crime. So if we can give them an opportunity, and we know that they'll take advantage of it, they won't be committing the crime. And I'm not going to tell you what that crime is, but, it's not good.
We have about 5 minutes left for 1 or 2 more questions. There in the back row.
Bruce Bjork, the Greater Minneapolis Council of Churches. I've really been interested in hearing all of these creative approaches to affordable housing and home ownership. But I'm wondering if anyone has invested as much time thinking creatively about other ways of wealth creation, because it seems to me we're putting all of our wealth creation eggs in the home ownership basket, and there are simply some folks who aren't ready for home ownership yet. In Minneapolis, St. Paul, you can spend half of your 20% of income affordability on homeowners insurance, property taxes, and utilities, and you haven't paid a nickel on a mortgage yet. So there are some folks who aren't ready financially able to do the home ownership thing. Are there other ways that we can help people create and accumulate wealth, which is really the value that home ownership offers the family?
Well, the earned income tax credit, for example, is a great thing. I mean, it's just hanging out there, waiting for people to be educated on how to apply for it. And so all of the faith-based and not-for-profit organizations in New York City, for example, collaborate on trying to get that out. You're exactly right. I'm sure that you do financial planning. I mean, just the basics. In our program, we charge people $50 a week for rent, $15 for food, and make them save $30 a week just to mirror what it is when they graduate and they go out and live in the real world, that these are the things that you have to do. Pay rent, save money, and pay for food. And coincidentally support your children, which is another large impediment to private sector employment, or that people have arrears that they have to pay.
And I would say in most financial literacy programs, whether it be ours or anyone, you talk in percentages of income and trying to get them in the mindset, our clients in the mindset of, what percentage are you going to put away? It might be 1-2% that you can afford to put away, but put it away into something that's smart and equitable, that has growth. And we give them case studies. We have A.G. Edwards, stockbroker, people who come in, volunteer their time to come in and spend a day with that class. It's a 5-week class, but they learn what stocks and bonds are about. and they start thinking more globally. I mean, they're no different than you and I. They still have the same aspirations and dreams. And you tell them what would have happened if they had bought a few shares of stock of IBM in 1990, how much money they'd have today. You know, you can go right down the line of good, smart investments outside of home ownership, although it is the best. There's no question that for impoverished families in America, historically, home ownership is the best investment there is. But there are certainly, I think, other models and great financial literacy programs that hopefully are all doing that kind of global financial training.
Oh, I want to say something also. I think financial literacy also starts with every year paying your taxes. If you educate people on their responsibility and how to pay their taxes, a lot of times you have people that go in and they automatically claim 0, or they'll go to the other extreme and claim 5 or 6, and you know their exemptions are only 3. You know, that type of education. How to read a pay stub, as basic as that. That's what we teach. Who is FICA? Who is this? Who is, you know, simple stuff as that. That is part of the education financial literacy.
I think we will wrap it up there. I know a number of you still had questions, and I'm sure we would encourage you to come up and chat with our panelists afterwards, and the first panel as well. So, Jay, but thank you.
Faith-based and community initiative in highlighting the role of community leadership is that government is not synonymous with public. Oftentimes we hear that as the public sector. Well, it is the government sector. But you've heard corporate leaders and nonprofit leaders who are advancing the public interest. And to be able to put the microphone out and to expose really these amazing stories to hopefully a set of leaders now that will amplify this message is a privilege for us and hopefully an inspiration for each of us in attendance today. A couple of other takeaways real quick that I was pleased to observe or noticed. One is apparently we served a bit as mythbusters. Government is indeed, you can tell through these 7 agencies that we've profiled today, a smart and active investor in communities. That may not be a commonly held perception. Corporations care more about than just the bottom line, and that's been on display in active form today. They care so much and are so savvy in how they invest in their own communities. Faith-based and community leaders are indeed smart business folk, that they're entrepreneurial and that they're outcomes-oriented and that they're running big, complex organizations and deriving great results. I think we've heard today that innovation can't be programmed. It's not something we can necessarily steer from here, but innovation, which takes many forms from communities up, can be harnessed, and I think it can be leveraged, and I hope that that's a value that we'll take from today, that in conversation with public and private partners in our own communities, we indeed can leverage the success stories that we talked about today to achieve broader scale. And the bottom line, I think, to today's conversation, and in many respects to our initiative, is that public investment either through the government stream or through the corporate stream cannot be made good. We don't get much of a return on that investment if we don't have the right faith-based and community partners executing those deals, providing the services, and being innovative in their approach. That is why we have faith-based and community initiative centers at the agency. I picked on myself earlier asking the question why at SBA or why at some of these other agencies. It's not because we want to advocate for faith-based charities or community organizations, nonprofits in a vacuum. It's because these are the organizations that extend mission. These are the organizations that are of community and for community, and taking those investments, serving more people than government could do if we just opened up a government facility. We need to do government plus, we need to do community plus, and I think that point ran through the various presentations that we heard today. So with all of that, thank you for your time, and have a good travel and a good day.